The time to build is upon us.
With great power comes great responsibility.
You know the greatest danger facing us. Ourselves. Irrational fear of the unknown.
Not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
This is the Superhuman Academy podcast.
All right, I cut you off. What were you saying? Coin flip?
Oh, yeah. So I actually encourage people to do coin flips all the time to take a decision because their reaction to the coin will tell them a lot about what they really want to do or not.
Yeah. Like, oh, man.
Yeah, it's like,
I didn't want it to be tails.
oh, that's your answer then. You don't want to do it. Or like, cool. Like, oh, cool. That's your answer. That's what you wanted to do.
Yeah, I do that with, like sometimes people ask me what they should get on like a menu at a restaurant.
Uh-huh.
And they'll be like, well, I'm between this and that. I'm like, oh, just get that one. And they're like, oh, man, but I don't really want to get that one. I'm like, oh, great. Then get the other one.
Here's your answer. It's so close, the answer you're seeking. That's funny. Yeah.
So funny to imagine today. I've got the short sleeves, but our shirts are very similar today.
Yeah. Well, it's getting cold here in the city.
Yeah, it's cold here too. Where are you at again?
I'm in Bronx.
Bronx. Okay.
I was just in Austin like last week, and it was 80 degrees. It was really nice, and I was like, it's 42 yesterday morning to start my morning. I'm like, ooh, I'm not used to this. I'm used to Texas weather.
Yeah, it's getting cold here too. But I really love like Indiana in the fall is beautiful. We've got all the colors right now, and then like in like 4 days, it'll probably all just turn to crap.
All the leaves fall off the tree.
Yeah, it get really cold.
Yeah.
So what's real for you right now?
You know, I just did a session with a wife of a couple that I'm working with, and she brought up something which I'm finding endemic in most of the couples I work with and most of the couples I speak to, especially the women, whether they're my couples or not, just people I know. And they're like literally just off of Zoom.
Mhm.
And I can share that with you if that's of interest.
Sure. Yeah, sounds great.
Because it seems pretty simple, but it's not. So what I hear from a lot of women is that they be much more interested in sexual contact or activity or intimacy with their husband, with their partner, if their partner kind of did more verbal foreplay. And the foreplay is not like 5 minutes before he wants sex, like saying nice things to her, like, it's like setting the stage throughout the day. And it's not even, it's more like being curious about her, asking her questions, engaging with her throughout the day, emotionally connecting, showing intellectual curiosity. And that seems for most of the women I've been speaking to, like if their husbands or partners did that, then when their husbands or partners do want some kind of physical intimacy, they're like primed for it because they feel connected to them. Because for them, the emotional and mental connection is the primer for the physical connection. And for the men, it's somewhat seemingly, it's not always the reverse. Like it's a physical contact which opens them up to more intimacy and connection, stuff like that. And with the men I work with, I will tell them, ultimately I tell everyone in the couple, like you're both completely responsible for yourselves and the relationship. In the short run, the husband, I'll tell him, he's more responsible, but ultimately he's not more responsible. Both are responsible. He's more responsible. You meet your wife's needs, not as a trick to get your needs met, but because she is your wife and you love her and you want her needs to be met. She's if you married her, she's the love of your life. She's a priority of your life. Make her feel like she's a priority of your life. You can't do that all the time, but 80-20 is pretty good. If you do that, the secondary benefit for you is more intimacy, more sex for the man. But don't do it because you're trying to get more sex. But it's a nice outcome from that. Seemingly, that's my experience of doing this for 30 years. And so the woman I'm working with was sharing, and she's a brand new client. Was just sharing pretty much the exact same thing. Like, she would like to be more physically intimate with her husband, but she needs something from him to get her kind of primed up for that. Everything I just laid out. And it just seems pretty simple. Like, when I tell the men that, cognitively they get that, but in terms of practice, it seems really hard because it's more like a quid pro quo. But I'm not getting my needs met. Why should I meet her needs? That kind of energy. Well, and it goes back and forth. It's not just the men doing that. I hear that from the women too. But I call the men out to a higher standard of action in the very short term to create a safe place for the wife to feel more comfortable in getting his needs met physically through her sexual expression. That's what's on my mind,
Yeah.
Colin, for this morning, actually.
And do you is so you're a counselor, you're a therapist. What's your the title that you go by?
Yeah, so licensed as a marriage and family therapist
Okay.
almost 28 years ago, in some
Yeah.
portion of there. But I've not worked underneath my license since 2000. I've called myself a coach since 2000.
Okay. Sure. Got it.
Because I don't do insurance. I had a really bad experience with an insurance company. I'm like, F that. I'm not doing the insurance thing.
Mhm.
And working as a coach gives me more leeway than working
Sure.
as a therapist under my life.
Yeah. So you're not under like a regulatory body as a coach.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Um,
It's a
and
free.
do you only work with couples or do you work with individuals?
No, I do wide variety of things. I do work with individuals. I have a very particular 6-month program. It's a comprehensive human development program, which I can share with you. I work with my couples, also a 6-month program. I co-lead a men's group with a gentleman named JC Glick. And then there's a wide variety of other kind of projects that I've done over time in history. But it's usually the individual work, my couples work, my men's group, and then also I'll do a team building, kind of the executive level, optimizing leaders and helping to build team cohesion. So those are
Mhm.
kind of the 4 areas, and then I dabble for the last 30 years in other areas as well.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay. I think what I'd be really interested to dig into
Yeah.
is so I guess I'll frame this from my side and then see if it's similar for you.
Mhm.
I spend a lot of my time thinking about kind of what's underneath things and like digging deeper, dig deeper, dig deeper. Like, okay, it's a surface level manifestation. I'm going to go, what's under that? And kind of seeking first principles and all that. And I end up doing a lot of theorizing. Like, I think this is like a way to tie these things together. And then I attempt to test that by coming up with like, all right, here's a practical way that would apply if that's true. And then I get other people usually like, hey, try this, see how that works. And then they tell me, and then I can use that to figure out where there are flaws in my theory, whatever.
I love that.
But I I don't often share a lot of the really deep theorizing behind things because then that just gets confusing and kind of clutters up and it kind of gets us away from, okay, well, here's the practical end point of this. But that's the stuff I really enjoy is like kind of the deep theorizing and
That's not
speculating.
surprising. Yeah, for you.
Are you similar in that
I
area?
I'm very similar in that way.
Okay.
That's why probably why
I figured based on our shirts, we're probably
exactly.
so
I enjoy hanging out with you for our class that we do together. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And I was thinking, like, I'm guessing, I could be wrong, but do you do other podcasts too? You've been on other shows?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm like 2 a week. I've been
Okay, so a lot of them, yeah.
hundreds and hundreds, yeah.
I'm guessing from my experience with as an interviewer and someone who's been interviewed, like tending to share the more surface level stuff it's easier to soundbite, easier for people to take action on, to
Mhm.
grasp really quickly. I'd prefer to actually skip that, and I wanna kinda go deeper into how you think in your theories about,
Uh-huh.
whatever is most interesting to you, whether it's relationships or something else. Like, what are the kind of deep theories that you've developed over time about things?
So, yeah, it's really funny just kind of Jungian synchronicities that you're asking for the deep structure versus the surface level stuff.
Mhm.
It's literally come up the last week in various conversations, including a class I'm in.
Great.
So it's like, wow, this is really cool. And I'll share a funny story. Ex-wife was a television producer, and I've done a lot of podcasts. I've done talk radio for other things that I've done, and I had some opportunities for TV. And she's like, You can't do what you do on TV." I said, "What do you mean?" She's like, "You don't have 20 minutes to explain the theory to do a 30-second soundbite. You have to do the 30-second soundbite." It's like,
Yeah.
your mind doesn't work that way. I'm more calling much more like you. I'd rather have a deep, long, intense conversation. That's hard to do in a 30-second soundbite on television.
Yes.
So I love where we're heading because I prefer what your preference are as my preference as well. So thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Great. Yeah. So what are some of your deeper theories that you work from that you developed over time?
So 2 things immediately cross my mind when you ask that question. When I work with my couples, I teach them, and it's a hard thing to get because most defense structures are lit up when you're activated by your partner's actions or non-actions or whatever she or he says or does. What I encourage them to do is to manage their nervous systems enough that they're able to hear what's underneath the language being used. There's a request, and it's not necessarily expressed very well. And I'll give you an example. So I'm thinking of a couple that I work with, and the underlying thing is she wants connection with her husband.
Mhm.
Top level, surface level thing is like she's pissed at him, and she doesn't say, "Hey, I would really like to connect with you." She's more like, "Why don't you do this and this and this and this and this?" So he's like, "Why are you attacking me? I need to get defended. I need to protect myself against you. We do tit for tat." And if you actually spend enough time with them, and this is, I would guess, for most human beings, like there's underneath this thing, there's an unmet need that she is unskillfully expressing. And it's not just her because she's a female. It's like men do it too. And if he can listen deeply enough to like, well, what does she actually want from me versus like the words coming out of her mouth, which seem pretty biting and attacking. And if I can operate from that place and actually engage with her, the deep structure of her needs and what her heart desires, her nervous system will actually calm down. She'll be less defended and attacking, and she'll be able to be more expressive of what she actually needs because she's going to actually get it met most of the time.
Mhm.
So you quiet his nervous system, in this case, but it goes both ways. Quiet his nervous system down enough so he can hear the deep structure of what she's asking for, not the surface level stuff, the way she's saying it, which is like, "Arr!" He starts engaging her with this, not this. So he doesn't go tit for tat defensive. He does this grounded, open, loving, curious. Her nervous system begins to relax because she feels safe. And then she can start being more honest in her expression. I
Mhm.
find that kind of dynamic really, really powerful. But most people will have a hard time going below the surface.
Mhm. So, all right. So let's see if we can play with this. I have a theory which I can take almost no ownership for, but spend a lot of time in my head. Um, Most of this comes from one of my mentors, Blair, but I've just formulated it a little bit differently for my own understanding and how I've seen it apply. So I see it as when people are interacting, there's kind of three gates. There's the safety gate, there's the understanding gate, and then there's the resourcefulness gate.
Mm,
And
I like that.
you don't get to pass go and collect $200 unless you have kind of checked the box in each one. And it's possible to go backwards. And if you go backwards, then you have to address that one before you can move on again. You don't get to skip. And it's not like once you've gotten one, you've just achieved it and you can just do whatever you want. It's like you have to maintain all three. So the first thing is safety. It's like in order for us to get to a place where we can actually reach understanding or resourcefulness, and resourcefulness would be the space in which we can change, come up with new possibilities, explore new possibilities, whatever. So any sort of change is gonna, in a healthy way, it's gonna happen there. Because there's also it's also possible to change people with abuse and trauma and stuff. But let's stay out of that one. Let's go on the functional side.
I like
So safety is almost, in my understanding so far, almost entirely a matter of body language.
that.
I can I can make it much more likely that someone's gonna feel safe for me if I'm checking a bunch of different body language cues. So one of them would be me being very relaxed, um, like not protecting my vitals, not being closed up, really keeping it very open, very relaxed, breathing slowly, keeping my face basically planed with theirs. In other words, I'm not looking down my nose at them. I'm also not looking up at them. It's very even, having a tilt to my head, having
Great. Yeah.
relaxation in my face, curiosity, care, and concern expressed in my facial expression. These are all these body language things. If a person starts to feel safe, what happens is that they start to mirror that. Like you said, their nervous system is calming down. And one thing that I look for is how much are they looking at me? Because when people are in threat detection mode, after they say or do something, they look for a reaction. And it's their brain like how's he gonna react to that? Is he gonna snap? Is his face gonna show judgment or anger or whatever? And when I notice that people stop looking at me, that's a sign to me that their subconscious has kind of said, "Okay, this person doesn't really seem to be a threat. I don't need to keep eyes on them all the time. I can kind of let myself float around." And so there's this shift, and oftentimes people's language patterns shifts from, um, you get, like, a lot of emotion, and then it starts to shift to be more explanatory, self-reflective, whatever, and then you've just crossed into the understanding zone, and at this point, what they're doing is now it's the body language is still very important, you gotta keep that, but now is the opportunity where a few words become very critical, which is reflecting back their keywords and phrases. So if they say, "I'm just so frustrated that XYZ whatever," and you respond, "You're frustrated." It's like, boom, okay, you checked they said that word, you matched it, boom,
Yeah.
they feel more and more understood. Once they feel really understood, you cross through that threshold, and only then do they open up to the point where they start to become curious about you or curious about what they might do or different possibilities. It's like
Yeah.
looking in present, future, and it's only at that point when asking questions or poking ends up actually working to potentially get, like, change or movement. If you ask them earlier on or whatever, it tends to trigger feeling misunderstood or feeling threatened or whatever. So it's like you go through the first gate, you maintain that. You go through the second gate, you maintain that. You don't shake up the safety and understanding, and then once you've crossed there, then you can start to problem solve or explore from that space, and that's where change really happens. That's kind of my theory. I'm throwing it all out there. I'm really
So
curious to hear your response.
I love that because, I mean, especially since we're in a recorded conversation for your podcast, because, no, not to dismiss most of the other podcasts that I've been on, because I enjoy those conversations, but the depth of this is really cool. Because usually I'll say what I just said, something along those lines, and then we move on to the next thing. There's not like a deeper dive into, a framework to try to use to understand what I just walked through. And I think that's a great framework you just walked through. Like that, I might make some modifications based on my 30 years of experience, but
That's what I wanna hear. Yeah, yeah. What are the
I really like that because, to stick with the understanding piece, I remember I worked with a couple and it was literally the first session and I wasn't even like doing work. Like I was just walking kind of through how I work with people. And I just did some active listening skills. Like literally the understanding. I hear you saying this. Is this what you meant? Like I was just teaching them how to do that
Mhm.
because I wanted them to make sure they understood me, forget each other.
Yeah.
And I got a call from the husband 2, 3 days later. Oh my God, that was so huge. Like I it wasn't even homework to them. They just practiced it with me, like, just making
Mhm.
sure that they were grokking what I was saying, but they started doing it with each other. And they're like, "We can't believe the breakthroughs we have by just listening to the other person, acknowledging what they said, and asking to make sure we understood what they meant," which is 2 different things.
Yeah,
I
right.
can paraphrase and say, "Hey, Colin, I heard you say that you're frustrated, but I interpret it differently than what you might mean, so I wanna make sure I understand what you mean." I mean, frustrated is not the best example, but, like, I wanna understand, is this what you mean when you say you're frustrated? "Oh, yeah. Okay. Alright. So not only do I really grok what you're saying, I understand it. You feel heard, and you can relax a little bit."
Mhm.
Back to the first box, I love the somatic stuff. I mean, that's my training was in somatics. I think somatically, and I love literally all the things you walk through. And the only thing I might add, and I'm sure this is already in your mindset, is like tone and volume of the voice.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I love the eye contact thing you said and feeling safe to look around, the relaxed nature of the physical body. And I'll step into that in a moment because I spend a lot of time in that space. But tone and volume, it's amazing to me to listen. Like I'll watch my couples argue about something, and one of them will say, "I didn't, I wasn't excited. I wasn't getting angry at you." And I'm like, going, "Whoa, you have no self awareness of how you actually express." Like I remember, one particular couple, um, and the woman felt like the guy's always going after her.
Mhm.
And he's like, "No, I'm not. I'm just asking questions." I'm like, "Whoa, like like, even my perception of the way you ask questions, which doesn't really matter. It's more important how she perceives it. Like, I can understand why she perceives those ways you ask questions because you're leading the witness. You're not curious. You want
Mhm.
her to go to a certain conclusion that you've already had in your head. That's why you're asking the question. So there's not a curiosity there. So I can see why she gets defended against your questions.
Mhm.
So like the tone and volume matter, the words we actually use, like, very NLP-ish type of stuff.
Mhm.
And like you said, you added the whole somatic, like the energetics of the body, the breath, the posture, the muscle tone. And I would suggest, like, we in partnerships, we might not consciously know it, but we can sense the change of breath.
Mhm.
We can sense that certain muscles that might be getting tight in our partner. Even the physical posture, the stance that might be saying
Yeah.
it's so. I mean, we do it all the time, but we don't necessarily consciously aware of it. But if we can become more consciously aware of it, especially when we do it, like how we physically show up in our relationships and how it has an effect on our partner, we can modulate that to change the effects on our partner. So I think it's brilliant what you just said. I love it. I love where this conversation is going.
Mhm. Yeah, so I've seen what I typically see is that if there is an issue in a relationship, then this is where my theory is like, okay, is this a super theory? Can this apply everywhere? Or are there counterexamples that I'm blind to either by confirmation bias or lack of exposure or whatever? I don't know. That's what I'd love to get your feedback. But I see it as kind of a model for all conflict. It's like, okay, if there's conflict in a relationship, it means that somebody has violated the order of this. They have jumped to seeking resourcefulness before getting safety. And so that would be very cliche example is men will be like, I'm always, problem solving. I'm trying to solve the problem.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
well, you haven't checked the first two boxes. So any, if you're asking like problem solving type of questions, which and the third category, the resourcefulness, right at the beginning, but the person doesn't feel safe or understood, then it's
Mhm.
not going to work no matter how nicely you frame your question or how intelligently you format it or anything. It doesn't really matter. Um, and also if somebody for whatever reason has gone backwards, they have so somebody now feels misunderstood, but you don't pick up on that. And you're like, "We got to resourcefulness,"
Okay. All right. Yeah.
and so you're just in that space, but it's like the other person has actually moved backwards and you fail to go back, pick it up where where it is now,
Yeah.
and then move it forward. You have to, like, back up. Then that can cause the issues as well. And so I'm wondering if there are counterexamples, though, in which it's like, no, people actually function really effectively even if they violate my little model there.
Man, putting me on the spot. I can't think at this very moment in my experience of working with couples forever of counter examples. Doesn't mean they don't exist, but I now have to go back in my mind and go, "Hmm,
Yeah.
has someone not done that?" Um, that's a good question. I don't have an answer for you right now.
Alright. Yeah,
But
that's
I I
interesting.
I
Okay.
do have a couple of comments though.
Please.
One of the and I'm curious on your take on this. One of the things that I seem to have a hard time I don't have a hard time. My men seem to have a hard time with when I try to explain this to them is acknowledge your wife or your partner's feelings does not necessarily mean you agree with her perspective.
Yeah.
And that's really hard seemingly for a lot of men. Like, oh, if I acknowledge her feelings, that means I'm agreeing with her. No, but that's
Mm.
the way it seems like the structure of the mind leads to that conclusion. I'm curious on like your take on that.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's I've noticed this as the difference between acceptance, surrender, and approval. Those would be
Mhm,
that's
mhm,
how I
mhm,
conceptualize that.
mhm,
For a lot of people, they have, or resignation is actually another one. So it's acceptance, approval, resignation, and then surrender is actually out this way. I've got like a diagram in my head. I'm not going to draw it here. So a lot of people mix up acceptance, especially with approval. That's what you were just talking about. Is those two in their head are very interconnected and kind of entangled, and they don't recognize that those are actually totally different things. And in fact, a lot of times they're almost opposite in a lot of ways.
mhm,
In other words, approval is judgmental inherently. It's like positive judgment. Yes, that's right. That's good. That's correct. I agree. Whatever, there's approval. Whereas acceptance does not have a judgment to it. In fact, it's like the opposite. It's like the absence of judgment on something. It's choosing not to resist what is. It's like, this is.
Right.
I accept it, and I'm not going to resist it. And a lot of that resistance is actually physiological. It's not just like intellectual.
Yeah.
It's very much in the body. And if somebody says, yeah, I accept that, well, even if I just heard somebody say it that way, I would know that that acceptance was maybe like a 3 out of 10. It's like, yeah, I accept that. But there's that edge to it, right? The way I just said that there's that edge of like, okay, fine, I'll give you that, but that's not what acceptance sounds like. Acceptance sounds more like this. I accept that. There's a release. It's a breathe out. There's a drop. There's a letting go of that edge and that tension and that judgment. And so one of the things I've started to work with people on is naming that difference. Is like, when I say acceptance, I don't mean approval. Here's the difference. I also don't mean, because usually if you parse approval and acceptance, then they think it's resignation. That's when they switch to the other one. Oh, you mean giving up. No, actually, that's not acceptance either, because resignation is also judgmental. It's, this is how things are going to continue to be, and I can't do anything about it. That's just a story. That's not part of it either. It's like, there's an acceptance. You're accepting what is right now, and there's also, you can accept your agency, which is, I also accept that I have some choices. Even if I don't know what those are, I accept that that's
Yeah.
there's possibility for change. And so I've found it to be helpful to parse those 3 things, usually starting with approval, because that's the most common, the one you're just talking about. Like, well, I don't agree with that. It doesn't matter if you agree with it. All right, here's what acceptance looks like. And then, oh, I'm just giving up. No, it's not that either. So it's getting away from that extreme, getting away from the other extreme, and finding that middle. And I found that modeling what acceptance actually sounds like, and saying, can you find something and just say that you accept it, and then we can give you feedback on whether you actually did or not, and you'll be able to feel the difference. And then once people find that, oh, that's what acceptance feels like. It usually feels like a release of tension in the chest. That's the most common expression I've heard people say. Is like, I just felt like a lightening, like something opened up, something released. Sometimes people feel some warmth. And it's like, okay, that, start to lock onto that, get that memory kind of locked in. That's what it feels like. And then you can gauge yourself of whether you're accepting or you're resisting. And you'll notice it feels completely different from approval and resignation. Once you can lock that difference into your body and your experience, then you're prepared to move forward with what you were talking about.
I love that. And I think one of the keys, at least in my work, from what I'm hearing you say, is the body piece. You know, these are not just cognitive things. These aren't just ways we think about things. You know, whether it's a dysfunction in the relationship, dysfunction in the system, or a positive pro-social thing, whatever it is, it's all embodied. You know, so and it's interesting because when I will talk to my clients, I talk about the difference between why something happens and how you do it. Like, why do I do what I do? Oh, when I was 8 years old, I had this interaction with my coach, my teacher, my mom, my dad. It set the stage for the certain behaviors. Okay, cool. That's it's interesting, and then it got reinforced over time. And this is the way I show up in the world. Awesome. Okay, very Freudian. We know this. We know the mother issue, the father issue. Which is great, and that it can be useful. Like, why something that originally emerged in the nervous system as a reaction to perceived a real threat in the environment. Cool. That doesn't change, doesn't heal necessarily a wound or give you new resources to engage the world differently. So I always I ask my clients how they do what they do. Like, if I'm talking about a particular feeling, how do you do anger? How do you do sadness? How do you do joy? How do you do bliss, happiness, joy, whatever, guilt, whatever the things are. And a lot of people at the very beginning, like, I just know that I'm angry. I know that I'm sad. I know that I'm happy. Like, okay, cool. That's a concept. I love it. Great. Those are words in your head. But how do you actually experience it inside the physical body? And for me, that's a first step in all the work I basically do with whether it's with individuals, couples, or my men's group or whatever it is like once you know how you do what you do, then you can reorganize the totality of one's experience in such a way that you can do it differently. But you got to build the inner asset capabilities and mantras and breath practices and progressive relaxation and taking more management over your nervous system. You got to do a lot of work.
Yeah.
Like how does it show up? So I love when you just said a long-winded way of circling back to what you just said, like, ooh, like I could feel it in my heart letting go. A lot of people just like they feel between their ears, which is really my feeling is like they don't have that connection there. So all the fact that you bring in like, ooh, how do you actually feel in the body? How do you experience it?
Well, we have a mutual friend, Tim. He and his wife, Becky, they really like to ask the question, "How do you know?" Which is very similar to what you're just saying. It's like, I'm feeling sad. How do you know you're feeling sad? And for most people, that question will seem very strange. It's like, well, I just know. But the question leads you to, you don't just know. There's some sort of information that you're getting, probably mostly from your body. There's some sort of sensations, and your brain is able to connect that pattern and label it as sad. But what is that pattern that is below your level of consciousness right now? And as you start to explore that, like, okay, the somatic sensations is I feel like this kind of my shoulders feel kind of heavy, and
Yeah.
it feels hard to hold my head up, and I feel this lump in my throat. And once you start to get all of these details, then like what you just said, it gives you what my mentor Blair likes to call like externally verifiable evidence. You got externally verifiable information. It's not just in your head anymore. Now
Yeah.
it's like I can point to that thing and like that's how I know. What I really appreciate about what you said is like how do you do? And then you fill in the blank with the feeling. And that's interesting because that also brings in a lot more like agency to that of like,
Yeah.
how do you do this? And how
Yeah.
that leads me to the question of how else might you do this or how could you do this or
So like I love the way you think because that's exactly where like for me, foundational is like the self-awareness, like how do I do this thing? But it's not an end in and of itself. It's interesting. It's a starting point, but it literally will lead us if you continue to do the work to like, oh, you don't have to do it that way.
Mhm,
You like once you free yourself up and become less rigid, psycho-emotionally, psycho-spiritually, like you can create other options of how you do the thing. So like for instance, when I work with my couples and let's just say the guy explains to me how he does his defense structure. Like, I'm a trained therapist, so I think so therapeutically and answers questions, but I coach. I'm like, oh, so how do you do that thing? Oh, okay. And his first thought I was like, well, I had a great example. When my wife says no, like when she wants to be physically intimate with her and she says no, she doesn't even say no. She just gives him that look or the eye thing or whatever.
mhm,
I just roll over and I go to bed and kind of pissy. It's like, all right,
mhm,
that's a start. Like, okay, I want you to really walk me through what might jokingly call with him, like, how do you take your toys and go home? Like, that's kind of what he
mhm,
does. He's like
mhm.
3-year-old take his toys and go home. You know, which is it's both I don't intend it to, like, make fun of him, but it lightens the mood in the conversation because he's like, "Yeah, it's kinda what I do. Yeah, it's kinda what I do." Right? But look, to your point, it's like, okay, great. You actually physically roll over, but I wanna know what happens in your somatically. What thoughts cross your mind? What's the tone and volume, like we said earlier? The breathing pattern, muscular tension, or even muscular flaccidity, anything happening in the gut, like, whatever the thing is, because once you know how you do that thing, then we can do interventions or interdictions in various ways in to start changing that
Mhm,
over time. Yeah, like, okay, you notice you hold your breath. Well, let's do a breathing practice to relax the breath and make it more expansive. Gives you more access to prefrontal cortex so you can think more clearly, so you don't say stupid shit, or whatever it is.
mhm,
Yeah, but there's various things you can do at the very subtle levels and gross levels to change your state so you don't have to take your toys and go home. You can
mhm,
like I always say to my people, like, hey, if you like that, you want to do that, as long as you're choosing to do that, whatever the thing is, okay, that's your choosing.
mhm.
But
Yeah.
it's built into your nervous system from 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years of practice but you're not fated to it. You can choose the things. Here's how we can choose other things.
Yeah, I like to explore and pay attention to what is my instinctual response to um especially discomfort, and discomfort comes in all shapes and sizes, but I started to pay attention to that, like notice when am I uncomfortable, and then immediately what does my body want to do? And one example of that was with eye contact. This is very common. People are uncomfortable with sustained eye contact, and I was no exception to that. And I'm still not really an exception to that. I just make some different choices, but um, I just noticed. I would start to notice, oh, I want to look away right now. Interesting.
Yeah. Okay.
In all sorts of different situations, and whether it was with coworkers or friends or a random person I just met, a cashier, like anyone. Like, I want to look away right now, and that's a response to a discomfort with continuing to make eye contact for whatever reason. And so I just started to play with that of like, all right, next time I feel that, I'm gonna maintain eye contact for 1 more second before looking away,
Okay.
or 1 more second and then see what I wanna do after that. And it was so interesting, and I do this sort of thing all the time, but it's so interesting to just watch what my brain does when it's like, it really wants to engage in a habitual pattern, and it's so uncomfortable, like, you can feel I can feel tingles in my brain when I am rejecting the habit pattern and doing something else. It's like nails on chalkboard almost. But I've learned to kinda love that feeling. It's like, "Oh, alright, so that means I am forcing new neuron connections. I'm forcing" like, that's what that feeling is,
Right.
and, like, I can explore that, and now I get to have a new experience, and I wonder what it's like, what it'll be like if I keep practicing this, what'll happen, and just getting really curious about that process has been
So
super fun for me.
I think that's awesome. It obviously requires a good bit of self-awareness and then ways of interdicting in your own nervous system to keep your eyes open a little bit longer. Your eyes, not your eyes are closing, but engaging.
Yeah.
Um, so when I'm asked, because resilience is one of the key things that I teach in some of my work. When I'm asked, and you just did an amazing job of kind of giving an example of it, like, "Hey, what do you mean by resilience?" I said, "Well, we can look at it many different ways, including like physical optimization and fall down 7 times, get up 8 times. All that stuff is true." Well, what I tell my men, especially in our men's group, is one way to consider resilience is your ability to sit with yourself for longer periods of time without seeking distraction.
Mhm.
Like porn, drugs, alcohol, Netflix, working out. Like, we have tons of stuff, especially with technology today.
Yeah.
I don't like how I feel. I'm gonna go do something else. Cool. So, and I love you're like, I'm gonna do it for a minute longer or a second longer, whatever it is like, that's literally all the time I'm in. Hey, if you can do this for 5 minutes, let's try it for 6 minutes before you seek the distraction, 7 minutes. Because for 2 reasons, and I'm curious on your take on this. One, if you don't process and allow the full flow of the energy around the emotions, it's gonna most likely do one of 2 things. Come out sideways as passive aggressive behavior because it's unprocessed, undigested. It'll come out somehow, or it might come out as a chronic illness down the road.
Mhm.
So the more you're able of just allowing the energetic, sensorial, mental, emotional, and flows of stuff to process out of your system, the less likely it's going to get stuck in there and then do something negative, mostly unconsciously because we're not.
Yeah.
I don't walk around going, "I'm going to become passive aggressive," or "Hey, I really want a heart disease. I'm going to do this to create heart disease." We don't do that, but it's kind of a consequence of some of our non fully processing our stuff. So I think it's really powerful for you to be like, I'm aware of, and I'm going to experiment. And the other piece that you said is really key too, is like, hey, this is uncomfortable, but I'm going to allow that. I'm going to sit with that uncomfortable feeling. Because what I tell everyone is like, I'm not into the misinterpretation of stoicism. Those repress our feelings. Like, hey, no, feel your feelings, but you're not 3 years old. You don't have to act on them. But
Mhm.
they're just feelings. Like in the Buddhist sense, they're clouds in the sky that cross, like there are thoughts and feelings that they come and go. Like if you can develop that kind of relationship to them, like, hey, I'm gonna feel them, but I'm not 3, I don't have to act on them. Cool.
Mhm.
To me, that's like a sign of maturity.
Yeah. Yeah.
And inside those feelings are valuable information. Like your body, your mind, the psyche wants you to know something. Why am I feeling sad? Why am I feeling insecure? Why am I feeling whatever the thing is? Like, if you ignore it, decisions get louder and louder and louder. Like, your psyche wants you to know something. Pay attention. There's valuable information in there, and it's in the body, not just
Yeah.
conceptually in the mind.
I would argue that your feelings are the most valuable source of information that you could possibly have because they're
Amen.
personalized to you, your context, your experience, the
Mhm.
moment, all of those things, and it's all packed in there. But one of the things that ended up being really powerful for me, I didn't really expect this, but it came out of my mouth one day. And then when it came out of my mouth, it resounded as true. It's like, you know how hopefully we all have that kind of internal BS meter for our own stuff. It's like you say something and then it's like, "Meh," like,
Like,
or
fuck.
it's like, oh yeah, that's solid.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You can say that without any waver or shake.
Mhm.
And something that spontaneously came out of my mouth one day and just rang as like, boom, that's true. And it was a realization for me. I didn't know it about myself until I said it. So interesting how that works, but was I'm not afraid of feeling any feelings. I'm
That's
not afraid of feeling angry. I'm not afraid of feeling fear. It's weird to say, but I'm not afraid of feeling fear. I'm not afraid of feeling happy. I'm not afraid, the whole range. And when that came out of my mouth is I'm not afraid of feeling any feeling. It's like, "Oh, wow, that's true," and, like, what an opportunity that opens up for me because, like, so often I think what we do is we're afraid of our feelings. We're afraid of, "Well, if I do that, I might feel that way, and I don't know if I can handle that," or "That sounds scary." We're like we're afraid of feeling.
yeah, 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 yeah.
So,
Crazy as that
it's like
sounds.
this
Very, very
self-reinforcing
yeah,
thing that we avoid a huge spectrum of human experience because we're terrified of what we might do or whatever, if we feel that to your point of, like, we're afraid we might act on it, like, well, if I feel angry, I might lash out, I might destroy things, I might hurt my partner or my kid or my dog or whatever, I might
right.
lose my job, whatever, but if it's like, "No, it's okay if I feel angry, I can feel that, I'm not afraid of feeling that, if it comes up, I'll address it, I'll learn from it, I'll process it, and that's okay," and a big part of that change for me was after losing my second son and feeling just immense grief and pain and all these different things and surviving and then being like, "Oh, okay. Like, I can feel that. I can feel grief, deep grief, and that's okay. I can if I can feel that, then I can feel anything and survive and just keep going." And so yeah, that for me has been transformational. Just when it came out of my mouth and feeling that it was true and be like, "Wow, I didn't know that was true. What an amazing realization to have about myself."
Which sounds so simple, and all these things sound simple, but they're not easy. Yeah, so good on you for, like, having that realization and articulating that realization and living into the realization. The most important thing is, like, your feelings are not gonna kill you. They're actually empowering to a certain extent. They show you who you are, how you think, how you perceive the world, all that kinda good stuff.
And it's
Um,
life. It's like if I'm not feeling anything, then I'm dead. I'm numb. I'm a
yeah,
block
you
of
know
wood.
and I'd be curious on your take 'cause, my training in somatics, I study Reich and all the neo-Reichians and stuff like that, and one of the things I'm actually trained as a body worker. When I did my postgraduate work in somatics, we had to go get certified as a massage therapist.
Mhm.
I
Very
don't
cool.
yeah, I don't do that work, but I do encourage my clients to find a good body worker,
Mhm.
rolfer or, depending what their issues are,
Mhm.
because for a lot of people, it's hard to feel their feelings because their bodies are structured in such a way to limit feeling of the feelings. Even if they cognitively like, I really want to feel all my feelings, like, which is great. Most people don't
Mhm.
go there. Their bodies are organized in such a way like, oh, it's scary to feel those things. So we've organized ourselves in such a way to protect us against
Yeah.
fully feeling those things. And there are things individuals can do on their own to open up their systems, but they can also work with a body worker too to help them free like the fascia and the breath and all the kind of good stuff.
Mhm.
Curious on your thoughts on like body work for these purposes and or self work one can do to help open the body up to feel more fully.
Mhm. Yeah, it's funny you ask. One of my real good friends, hang out with him all the time, is a very experienced myofascial release therapist, and he's done a lot of other body work, and sometimes he'll just work on me for free, which I deeply appreciate.
Oh, you gotta
Just like
love
we'll be
that.
talking, and he'll be like, "Oh, you're really like protecting your shoulder over there. Let me work on that."
Nice.
Whatever. So, I've learned a lot from him. So he would be able to speak a lot more on the body work, but just in my experience, a big part of it has been here's my practice. Here's exactly what I do. I just sit and I breathe and I look for whatever usually physical sensation arises to the top of my attention. And I don't question it. I don't judge it. Um, Maybe it's like I'm creating it. I don't care. If I'm creating it, fine, great. Um, but I'm like, oh, like my toe itches a little bit. Like, doesn't
Yeah.
matter what it is. I just notice it, and then I go through the acceptance practice. So what I described before. So the question I kind of asked myself was, can I accept this feeling right now? And there's like a flow chart to this, but usually the answer is yes. So I'm like, yeah, and then so I literally say, so let's see, what am I feeling right now? I feel a little like itch in my top right quadrant of my forehead right now. So like, can I accept that feeling? Like, I accept this itchy feeling in the top right quadrant of my forehead right now. And then I ask the question to myself, what does that acceptance feel like? And I notice that because it will also have a feeling to it. And it's usually similar for me. I feel some sort of release in my chest, but sometimes it's different. It's like just then I felt a little bit of release in my chest. I also this will commonly happen for people. I've done this with people a bunch of times. They will also notice that now the feeling that arises to the top of their attention is different than it was before.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's the same question. Well, what's the feeling that I notice the most right now? And it's not the same one. It shifts. And so it like bounces around your body. And if you keep doing this, what I've experienced, and I've many other people at this point that I've worked with on this have experienced, is you reach a point of peace.
Mm.
And a huge, profound understanding that I had also after the loss of my son was that peace is not the absence of feeling. It's not the absence of, it's not, I would argue for me, in my experience, it's not even the absence of suffering. Peace is being fully present and non-resistant to what is. It's like that. It's that state of, I have accepted everything that I'm aware of right now. There is nothing which I'm aware of right now that I'm resisting.
So, I call it Fudishin, and I actually, co-lead an organization called Team Fudishin. Fudishin in Japanese is from the Japanese martial arts. It means immovable heart or immovable mind. It's a still point. Even if you have chaos inside of yourself, chaos around you, it's that kind of still point. So it doesn't mean you're like living in a cave and, you're free
Mhm.
of all stressors, although living in a cave could be pretty fucking stressful. But but to your point, I think I love the way you described it. I'm, like, actually gonna steal that as I talk
Yeah,
about
go ahead.
Team Fudishin more. That's great. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's really cool because you can just keep following, and it's like, I don't know where this path is gonna take me at all. I have no idea, and it's also that part of it is accepting that process of like, this might take 5 seconds, it might take 5 hours, it might take 5 years. I don't know. I'm accepting the process. Usually it doesn't take 5 years. It's like, yeah, eventually, usually for me, it's a matter of maybe 5 minutes. You bounce around the body, it goes all over the place, but then there's a point at which it's just there's no more resistance to it. Things keep popping up, they kind of float by, and, I'm at a state of peace, and that was when I felt that the first time, I immediately knew that's what that was. It was like, "Oh, that's what peace feels like." I had never labeled it before, I didn't know that's what it was, and if you'd asked me before I felt that, I would have said something totally different.
Yeah.
I probably would have said it's like the state of being without any, you know, any pain or something like that, and it's like, "No, that's actually not true." I actually experienced peace for the first time in the depths of the most pain I've ever had because it brought me to the present more fully than anything before. And because I was so present, I was able to actually accept what was present because I was present to it.
Right. Well, let me ask you a question on that too, because I teach two seemingly opposite things. I teach the allowing, like, hey, just sit with whatever's arising in your system and allow it to move through the system in all its glory, whatever it is,
Mhm.
somatically, energetically, cognitively. But also, I teach state changes
Mhm.
because there are times like, oh, I don't have time to. I don't deny that feeling, but this is not the right time to process that feeling because I have to be, I'm responsible to, obligated to other things in my life. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. I teach people how to change their state so they can
Yeah.
accomplish whatever they need to accomplish in the short run, but not deny those feelings which they need to maybe come back to and deal with at some point. I'm curious
Yeah.
your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I would call that functional dissociation.
Okay.
I would call it functional temporary dissociation because I think all functional dissociation is temporary. Um, and yeah, I do have some like practices around that of it's noticing. It's like, oh, my I'm feeling this right now.
Mhm.
That is not like I have something else I need to do right now. And so I'm not able to process that effectively in this moment. I am choosing to set that aside, but I kind of talk to that feeling almost like, hey, I'm going to come back to you.
Okay.
We are going to work through this. I will hear you. Right now, I need to do this thing. But there's this trust building with these different parts of yourself.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because if you don't come back to it, now you're going to have problems. Because now not only have you just like delayed that process, but you've also broken the trust with yourself
Yeah.
of, hey, you said you were going to come back and deal with me and like help me and hear me and understand me and embrace me or whatever. And you didn't. Well, now you've got like secondary. This is where you're talking about like where you got disease and body keeps the score. It's like now you've got all these downstream effects of
Right, right.
neglect, abandonment, and broken trust with yourself. And so a huge part of first of all, I don't dissociate unless it really seems necessary. It's like I need to do this right now and I can't do that. Because usually processing through emotions, like if you've practiced it a lot, can be extremely fast. It doesn't have to take forever. It can be moments. But there are times, like if you're in a crisis situation, then sometimes you just need to turn into the machine that just does what's necessary.
Right, right, right.
But yeah, if you don't go back, you're gonna pay for it.
100% agree. I know parts work are kind of very popular, and I think parts work are great. And actually, I do a lot of parts work with clients. But I was brought up a million years ago in a situation. Anthony Jolie. He's a psychiatrist in the
What's
Freudian
his name? Sorry, I missed it.
field. Assagioli. He was an Italian psychiatrist around the same time as Freud, Jung,
Okay,
Adler,
sure.
right? And his thing was subpersonalities.
Mhm.
So I'm like, it was really funny because when I started hearing people talking about parts, I'm like, going, are those subpersonalities? It's the same thing. Just
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
brought up modern day. But I think the parts worker is also really important for oneself. I'm glad you brought that up, and also for my clients as well. And to your point, that if you ignore that part, repress the part, don't engage with that part, turn into a demon which you hate, you're going to fight all whatever you do. That's really not productive to a healthy human being. Becoming a healthy human being and wholeness, it's going to come out some way.
Mhm. Mhm.
Body keeps a score, or anything like that, where it's going to come out as a physical ailment or a psychological problem. So yeah.
Yeah, and I've got maybe a hot take on this too. Like there are a lot of terms that people use for parts of themselves that have just become part of the collective unconscious and just accepted implicitly. Like one of them is inner critic,
Okay.
and we all just I don't anymore, but it's just this universal acceptance. Everybody's got an inner critic, and it's just like, oh yeah, that's just treated as a fact. It's like, wait a minute, you have just labeled a part of yourself as the inner critic, and that's usually a negative connotation. You've just accepted that label for yourself. What is your inner critic? How do they feel about that label?
Oh, that's great, man. I
And
love that.
it's like,
Yeah.
if they don't like that label, then like, why are you forcing it on them? And I wouldn't ask the why question because that's just getting down a
Yeah.
different rabbit trail. It's not helpful. But what, how do they want to be known? Like, what would be more? What is their place? What function do they play? That's important. That's healthy. That's part of your community. Do they accept the label of inner critic, or do they criticize it?
You know, I
Reject it. I don't have an inner critic.
I'm stealing that because I have the same outcome, but I've never used the same language you use to ask that question. Because what I will tell my clients when they're that inner critic, which I'm going to change how I talk about that. I love that, is that part emerged to protect you against a real perceived threat.
Yeah.
It's not a bad thing. It's actually a good thing. It might not be serving you the way you'd like to now, but it's an energy inside your system. Let's ask it to show up differently. It's not going to go away. Let's ask it to show up differently. But I love the idea of not like labeling it such a.
Ask it, what do you call yourself?
I
How
love
do you
that.
think of yourself?
Yeah, that's
And like the terms that come up for me would be protector,
mm,
sometimes even provider,
yep.
caretaker,
Yeah.
like mother, even,
Yeah.
the protective mother or father, or it's like it probably doesn't call itself inner critic.
Yeah.
It probably resents that label a little bit.
Love, yeah.
And
Okay.
and there are other parts like that. Like I was talking to a guy a while back who he kept mentioning the saboteur. He was like, the saboteur. And it was a character in his head. It was sub-personality part of him. And I was like, does the saboteur call itself the saboteur? Never bothered to ask it because it was just an other. It was an enemy. I just applied this label to it as it's this bad thing. Well, it's part of you. It's like, what does it call itself? It probably doesn't call itself that.
It's probably trying to keep you safe. Exactly.
Yeah,
All right. So
exactly.
I'm this is great. I'm saying like half a dozen things for me.
Great, please. Yeah, I
That's some good stuff.
appreciate the back and forth.
Yeah.
Well, this time has absolutely flown by, unsurprisingly. Um, I usually don't really think about an audience until like the last 2 seconds of one of these. But all right, there might be people who listen to this. Is there anything you want to say to them?
You know, this is more of like something an individual can do, but it's a cultural thing. Um, Kindness. I think it's really important for us to, as we engage other human beings, and I don't even mean friends, family members, it could be strangers, people in the grocery store, walking the streets. A little bit of kindness can go far. There's a lot of people out there who are suffering for various reasons, and just the slightest kind act can, even if it's momentarily, give them hope. And for some people, it can give them the amount of hope they might need not to take their own life. Having been around suicide a good bit, and just people suffering really deeply, a little bit more kindness would go far
Mm,
to yourself as well as other human beings.
mhm.
Yeah.
And Michael, is if people wanted to learn more from you, is there a place that they could do that?
Yeah. Website Michael D. Ostrolenk, OSTROLENK.com. On Instagram and Twitter, M Ostrolenk. And then LinkedIn and Facebook, Michael David Ostrolenk. And I post daily. So if you're interested in how I say things and how I think about things, there's content on a daily basis on all those platforms.
The Superhuman Academy podcast is hosted by Collin Jewett and designed and edited by Army Cinco, with original music by Joshua Schunig and voiceovers by Corey Page Schunig. That's me. You can find past episodes and resources, as well as access to the ever-growing Superhuman Academy community at superhumanacademy.com. If you like the show, don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review on your podcast platform of choice.